excited about our topic this month. Definitely had some really powerful recent conversations around this topic that I think will really shed some light, give us some understanding of how the we're not going to go to all the dimensions, but we're going to focus on third, fourth, and fifth dimension. That's what we're going to focus on. It'd be really cool to go to like the 12th dimension, but first things first. I think the third, fourth, and fifth have a lot of impact on how we live our lives and how we experience reality. So we'll stay focused on that. But let me just give you a little brief info about it. For most people, I would exclude both of you from this, but for most people, reality is about what we can taste, smell, see, touch, feel, and hear, and little else. And for a select few, like both of you, there is a continuous awareness of other unseen realms of existence. I love that old phrase, knowledge is power. And I've observed that a deeper understanding and more knowledge about these other realms and dimensions can help us to be more empowered and give us more freedom, even here in the third dimension. And this month, we're going to focus on third, fourth, and fifth dimension. And we're going to learn how to take our limited 3D thinking, process it through the fourth dimension, which is not my favorite dimension, but we'll get to that, and emerge into the higher oneness consciousness, divine consciousness that can be found in the fifth dimension. And what's really interesting is we can be present in more than one dimension at once. Like I can be fully present in my 3D body, but choosing to be in fifth dimensional consciousness while in a 3D body. Doesn't mean I make it there every day, but the hope is to spend at least part of the day in fifth dimensional consciousness. But we'll get to what all of that means. Now, since it's you two, I think I'm going to go with a little more interesting breathing exercise. I had a hard one planned, and then I was like, oh, I don't know, but it's you two. We're going to do a holotropic breath to really boost our DMT production, natural DMT production by the brain, so we can go on a real trip, a real ride through outer space and other dimensions. So for this one, it's best to do it on the floor. And let me see, I can tilt my screen down so you can see me. It's just getting so dark now. Let me turn on a few more lights. That might help. All the lights I have in this room. I don't even know if those help, but there we go. I'll move my microphone. So for this breathing exercise, we are going to sit in Virasana pose. So it's best to sit on your knees for this one, like in yoga. And when we do it, we're going to do a sharp mouth inhale. Bring our palms up like that. And then sharp mouth exhale. Kind of like a shh sound on the exhale. We'll do that 5 times. On the 5th one, we're going to rise up onto the knees on the inhale, sip in as much air as you possibly can, bring the hips forward so they're over the knees, tilt the chin up, hold the breath as long as you can without passing out. Then we're going to tap the chest twice with the fist, and then come all the way down like child's pose, third eye to the floor. So I love this one because it actually doesn't take that long to get into a different state of consciousness. It's like taking drugs without taking drugs, if you will, through breathing. So it's going to be 5 rounds of hold the breath, sip in as much as possible, bring the hips forward over the knees, tilt the chin up, hold as long as you can, and then we'll tap the chest twice, come down to child's pose. We'll do that a few rounds. We'll do one practice round, and I'll check in with you, see how you're doing, and then we'll probably do a few more rounds after that. I love this breathing exercise, gets us there quickly. So to do this, and the reason we bring our palms up is because in case you get dizzy and lose consciousness, you're not going to, just in case, you got the hands there to catch you if you fall. All right, so let's go ahead and get in Virasana if that works for you. If Virasana is uncomfortable, you can take a pillow and situate it between your butt and your calves and ankles, and then sit on the pillow, and that can help. And the other thing, you could also tuck your toes under. I like to leave mine flat so I can go lower, but you could also tuck your toes under with a pillow. That makes it a little easier. So enough of me talking. Let's go ahead and dive in. We want to be in Virasana. And then empty all the air from your lungs. Sharp mouth inhales, exhales. Let's go ahead and begin. Rise up under the knees, sip in more air, hold the breath. Hips forward, Buddha belly. Sip in a little more if you can, hold. When you need to, tap the chest twice, and then all the way down to child's pose. And then rise back up. Are you alive at least? Can we do a few rounds of that? Okay. Coco's got fireworks. You must be doing great. We're going to try to go for 5 rounds. And we want strong, sharp inhales, strong, sharp exhales. That's how we get to those altered brain waves. So let's go ahead and begin. Empty all the air from your lungs. Palms facing forward. Rise up under the knees. Sip in as much air as possible. Hips forward, Buddha belly, hold the breath. Sip in a little bit more air, tilt the chin up. Hold as long as you can. Hold as long as you can, but when you need to, tap the chest twice and then come down to child's pose. Take a reset breath in child's pose, probably just one. And after you've had 1 round of reset breath in child's pose, let's come back to Virasana. Empty all the air from your lungs, and let's begin. Rise up under the knees, hold the breath, sip in more. Buddha belly, hips forward over the knees, tilt the chin up, sip in a little bit more. Hold as long as you can without passing out. When you need to, tap the chest twice and come down child's pose. 1 reset breath in child's pose. When you're ready, come back to Virasana. Empty all the air from your lungs, palms face forward, and let's begin. Rise up, sip in more air, hold the breath. Hips forward, Buddha belly, tilt the chin up, sip in a little bit more, hold as long as you can without passing out. When you need to, tap the chest twice and come down. Take a reset in child's pose, and we'll prepare for probably 2 more rounds. I'm already getting warm now from this. This is pretty good. Empty all the air from your lungs, palms forward. Get ready. Let's begin. Rise up, tilt the chin up, hold the breath, sip in a little bit more air, hips forward over the knees, kind of like camel pose almost. Buddha belly, sip in a little bit more air if you are able. When you need to, tap the chest twice and come down. Child's pose. 1 reset breath in child's pose, and we'll prepare for our final round. Empty all the air from your lungs, palms face forward. If you want to close your eyes for this one, go ahead and do so, and let's begin. Rise up, hold the breath, sip in more air, hips forward over the knees, tilt the chin up, almost like a camel pose. Sip in a little bit more Buddha belly. Hold as long as you can without losing consciousness. When you need to, tap the chest twice and come down to child's pose. And when you're ready, I invite you to just take a moment in Virasana. If you'd like to take a mudra of any sort, just hold the hands in your lap or on the knees or on the thighs. And just close your eyes and reflect. Take a moment to feel the altered brain waves and even the altered state of consciousness that can come with this breathing exercise. Receive its benefits. And when you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. I love that breathing exercise. It's intense. And there's other intense breathing exercises I do that I have to do for longer before I can start to get the other dimensional benefits from them. This one, I can get there pretty quick with this one. But again, I like to call that holotropic breath. It definitely takes us to a different state of mind. And with that, I want to go ahead and take us on a little journey through the dimensions. Let me get a little screen share going here. I even got fancy this week and made a little graphic to illustrate the dimensions. Me and graphics, I'm not the best at that thing, but I was like, we need something. So there are so many different models and frameworks for how reality works, from religions and cultures throughout history to modern day quantum physics. And it really can be fascinating to see how different models and concepts from different cultures, like India in particular, have so many overlaps with modern day scientific theories about reality. It's like there's a lot of parallels between the way that ancient India viewed energy, reality, and how quantum physics looks at it. What we're going to explore this month in Soul Expansion is not intended as this is exactly how it works. We found the magic recipe. This is how it works. But it's just more like a way of trying to wrap our brains around something that is very outside the box, very infinite in nature, while we have finite minds and a finite way of understanding things. So last week and the part of the week before, I was in Mexico, and while I was there, I spent a good bit of time with my old friend in Mexico City, and she's just brilliant. She's such a smart woman. She's been in this group a few times, Rosario, but she really has such great insights and knowledge on things like this. And we had the best conversation one night in dinner about third, fourth, and fifth dimensional realities and how they interact. And while we were talking, I was just getting, those spine chills and like the epiphanies, the downloads, the light bulbs going off above my head. I was loving it. I want to share some of the epiphanies that I came to. So we are very familiar with how third dimensional reality works for the most part because we live in it, we feel it, we experience it. And out of these three dimensions, the third dimension is said to be the most dense of the dimensions. We feel the intensity, we feel a lot of emotions here. There's a whole lot of emotions in the third dimension. Whole lot. And as our bodies are no longer in their 20s, we start to feel more aches and pains and challenges in the body, all that good stuff. Um, most people that are here in the third dimension, they're just trying to survive and trying to get by. And a lot of people here, I'd say the majority, aren't ever going to really stop and ask those deeper questions or try to develop that really deep understanding of God and reality. I would say even a lot of people who go to a church every week aren't really asking the questions and pressing it and trying to understand it. Most people are wired to just kind of follow protocols and do what they are told and just kind of hum along, whether they're in a mindset of ignorant bliss or disempowered pain and suffering. It's not fun, but that's how the majority of people live their lives. Yet the third dimension is a place where we have the option to awaken. And awakening is not a one time event, it goes on, hopefully for a lifetime. And we have the opportunity to choose to do more than just barely survive. So I want to show a movie clip from a movie you're probably familiar with. And let me see if I can find my Zoom again. Okay, here we go. Just watch a very brief clip here. And here we
Do
go.
you want to know what it is? The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room, you can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you taxi. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you. That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison that you cannot smell or taste or touch. A prison for your mind. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So that is our little clip. 1 second. Now I have to find my screen.
Hi, everyone. I am absolutely.
Now we're hearing Pam Gregory talk about astrology. She's great, but we don't want to listen to her right now. So, okay, there we go. Could not find my screen. All righty. Me and technology. Okay, and I would like to share our little graphic here. So let me put it back up again. There you go. Wonderful. So this clip from The Matrix is a nice example of what it means to look deeper, ask questions, try to understand, try to wrap our brains around things, perhaps even wrestle with knowledge, information, truths, lies, deceptions, all of it. And I love that clip because I think it really illustrates it quite well. Accepting the deeper knowledge of how reality works is like this clip. Like, if you know, it's really hard to unknow. Like, once you know something deeper, you would really have to numb yourself out to try to forget it and not but you can't really ever unknow once you know. In a similar way, if you are presented with the opportunity to know more and you turn it down, that opportunity may never come again. He said to Neo, "This is your last chance." If you get the opportunity to have that deeper knowledge, those deeper downloads and revelations, and you are scared or you avoid, yeah, might not come around again. Many in the third dimension are like sheep that are led around. A sheep, in order to survive, does need a shepherd, safety, protection from predators. Sheep need to be led to water, led to food, all of that. If a sheep is fortunate and they have a good shepherd, then the sheep will be led to green pastures and plentiful streams to drink from. But if the sheep is unlucky, the sheep will be neglected and fall prey to wolves and other predators. That's kind of the third dimension in a nutshell. Here in the third dimension, here on our graphic, sheep are victim consciousness, or you can choose to awaken deeper into God-connected consciousness. And this God-connected consciousness is really a part of the fifth dimension, which we'll cover much more deeply. But with the awareness, with the inner work, with the kinds of work that you do, both of you do, you have the ability to move into 5D consciousness. If we don't do this inner work, if we don't ask the questions and try to do this work, then we are more vulnerable to giving our energy and power away. And some of that energy and power can be leached off of by the fourth dimension, which we'll get into now. So let's take a look at the fourth dimension. Here in the fourth dimension, self-determination is a big part of it. In the fourth dimension, there's a greater ease and ability with seemingly less limitation. I haven't physically been in the fourth dimension, but my understanding is that in the fourth dimension, some of these laws of physics that we know here on Earth, like say gravity, do not apply. There are beings and entities that inhabit the fourth dimension. I can't pretend to know the totality of the beings and entities that are there, but there definitely are beings and entities that have self-determination, meaning they have a lot of empowerment, a lot of abilities that they are aware of. However, they're lacking in the oneness consciousness. They're lacking in the knowledge of that God love, divine, unconditional love consciousness, and seem to be either lacking in or not caring about the connectedness of all that is. Not quite knowing about or caring about whatever I do has ripple effects for everyone and everything else throughout all layers of existence. Fourth dimensional beings can feed off of emotional energy from here in the third dimension. Many would say that strife, fear, anger, bitterness, jealousy, not forgiving someone, all of that, those are all emotions that beings in the fourth dimension can consume. Similar to flies on rotting food. They love the rotten stuff. We could say this is the realm of entities like demons, spiritual scavengers, spiritual parasites, even egregores, etc. Humans that are in a low vibe state of mind in the third dimension can very easily become prey of the beings of the fourth dimension. Now, most people who say would be prey of these beings aren't necessarily aware that they're prey or they're being fed off of. There's a term I've heard so many times, and I can't even remember where all I've heard it, but loosh. And don't ask me how to spell it, but the fourth dimensional beings feed off of loosh. So if we are in fear, in anger, in bitterness, in unforgiveness, any of that, we are generating this loosh that they can feed off of. But no, we all have emotions, and our emotions are not bad. If something happens that angers you, you got to feel that. You got to look at it. You got to acknowledge it. It's more when we stay stuck in it and don't process through to the other side of a difficult emotion that we can be fed off of. there's a very small minority of humans um, in the third dimension that purposefully and consciously let these entities feed off their energy in exchange for some sort of perceived power or advantage or benefit. I mean, there are not a lot of them, but think about like a Satanist or certain cults would tell people, hey, if you make a deal with these entities, they'll give you power or money or what have you. So it's sort of that thing. There are people who go, I'm aware of the fourth dimension, and I think I get benefits from giving some of my energy to the fourth dimension. But the vast majority of humans just are unaware of it. They don't understand it. They don't understand how the fourth dimension interacts with the third dimension. When we are trapped in a mindset of constantly fighting or resisting that which we don't like, we can also be trapped by the fourth dimension. So let's say there's that person that keeps coming up, or you keep seeing the same type of person or the same type of energy or the same pattern repeat over and over in your life, and it's very frustrating. If you're always fighting against it instead of making peace with it, that can definitely keep you trapped by the fourth dimension and fed off of as prey for the fourth dimension, by the fourth dimension. So recently I was working with someone one-on-one who is on this very powerful spiritual awakening journey. And he is a lucid dreamer. So he becomes quite lucid in his dreams. He knows he's dreaming, and he knows, oh, I'm dreaming. I could fly. I can, jump 300 feet in the air if I want to, whatever. I mean, he realizes he's got all these abilities in the dreamscape that don't necessarily apply in the waking state. To make a long story short, he says most of his life he's been plagued with these recurring nightmares of it's either a monster or a murderer coming after him and other people and chasing them down. Sometimes it's like someone coming with a weapon, trying to chase them all down. Sometimes it's literally like some kind of movie monster that's scary. But anyway, he says most of the time in those dreams, everyone starts screaming and running and fleeing, including him. He joins the crowd and runs. And he said when he became lucid in dreams, he realized he could fly away, just like leap up and fly, and he would fly off to another scene in the dream. But he tried something recently that was so profound. He said instead of running and screaming and being sucked into the chaos, he turned around and ran towards, whether it was a monster or murderer, I don't remember. But he ran towards and charged after this villain, and the villain stopped and he stopped, and they faced each other. And I think he said he put his hand up first with his palm facing forward, and then the villain did the same thing, and their palms touched, and then they interlocked fingers, and it was like this total peace moment. And I thought that was so fascinating. It's like, okay, if we run from in fear or if we fight, we are being manipulated, controlled, fed off of, etc. If we choose courage and the boldness that we have access to, we can make peace with it. I also thought it was interesting because he noticed that, I wouldn't say mirrored in terms of the bad guy always did the same thing he did, but his choices and behavior always affected how the bad guy would behave in the dreams. He said he's had other recent dreams where what did he do? He ignored the monster and it left him alone. He said there was one dream where the monster was chasing after him. He turned around and ran back at it, and he didn't do anything. Blank stare, no emotion. He just stared at the monster and observed. And he said the monster did the same thing. So it's really interesting how our choices, our behaviors ripple out. Let me get my night shift off so I got a little more light. There we go. But that really fascinated me, how our behavior is mirrored by these forces. Um, so let's move on to the fifth dimension. I wouldn't say that the fifth dimension is necessarily heaven or nirvana, but it's a place that where God consciousness is the norm. So in the fourth dimension, this connection with the divine, this unconditional love, is not consciously a part of the fourth dimension. But in the fifth dimension, there exists this consciousness of connection with all that is, the consciousness of connection with, not separation from, but connection with God, with the divine. And Rosario gave me some good pointers. She said God consciousness is a part of fifth dimension and above. She says fifth dimension is the lowest dimension where it's kind of the norm, even though here in the third dimension we can access that. But she said fifth dimensional consciousness is where the God consciousness is first, the lowest dimension in which it's the norm. Here in the fifth dimension, everyone who's in fifth dimensional consciousness, or the beings that inhabit the fifth dimension, understand that every action ripples out throughout all of existence. If I do something really positive, it's going to ripple out and have, for the most part, positive consequences. If I do something really negative, it's going to impact everyone and everything. And I think that's pretty interesting. One example of 5D consciousness is recognizing that when we are in a fight or resistance mode here in the 3D, that we can choose, instead of fighting and resisting, to make peace with something and learning from it and applying its wisdom, just like the guy in his dreams. Let's see here. Here we go. The other thing that's become very apparent to me recently is there's not really a shortcut from 3D to 5D. You have to work with the energy of the fourth dimension in order to get to the fifth dimension. So I guess you could look at it two ways. You could look at like, oh, those darn fourth dimensional entities trying to feed off my energy and manipulate me. Ugh. Or you could go, wait a minute. They're here to push me to greater awakening. Their purpose is to help me ask the deeper questions, step into my power, not be a victim, not choose victim consciousness. They're here to push me, to challenge me. Think of like a coach in a sport. If you were playing a sport, your coach might yell and scream at you, but it's to get your performance better. It's to get you out of your head and into your body, that sort of thing. So these, what we might think of as dark entities, they serve a purpose. They serve purpose. The other thing that's really interesting is the fourth dimensional entities do have a tremendous amount of power and control over what happens in the 3D. All you really need to do is think of the realm of politics. Most of the political things in the world are largely manipulated and controlled by fourth dimensional energy. And, you know, we could scream and rail against this politician or this party or that party. But what I think is really interesting, I would say the majority of those politicians are not consciously aware that these fourth dimensional energies are manipulating them, feeding off their energy. But I can look at it and go, wait a minute, don't get caught up in getting angry. Watch what's happening and watch how it's being used to catalyze people to awakening. Watch how it's being used to catalyze people to ask questions, to look deeper, to try to have deeper understanding. So let's take another example of 3D, 4D, 5D consciousness. Let's say that you have a friend who betrays you by gossiping with other people about some really personal, deep, dark secret that you confided in them. If this happened to you, you would experience so many emotions like, oh my gosh, I can't believe she told everyone my secret. I was just trying to get it off my chest and I thought I could trust her. You would feel betrayed. You would feel angry. You'd feel sad. You'd feel hurt. You might want to punch her or something. I don't know, but you'd feel all these painful emotions. And those are legitimate emotions. You can't avoid them, you need to feel them. If you were to remain stuck in those emotions without processing through them, then you would become right prey for either fourth dimensional entities, fourth dimensional consciousness, or both. But if you wanted to not stay stuck in it and not become a victim, you'd have to acknowledge the emotions here in the 3D and feel them. And then you would have to work through all the stuff in the fourth dimension to break through to fifth dimensional consciousness. Where in fifth dimensional consciousness, you could look back and go, okay, why did this happen? It's not because I'm a bad person. Maybe this happened because I haven't had healthy boundaries or I haven't been trusting my discernment. If I'd listened to my discernment would have said, don't tell her this secret. She's not trustworthy. Maybe I didn't have healthy boundaries with her and she pried the secret out of me, whatever it is. But in 5D consciousness, we can understand wisdom. We can learn. We can see challenging things as opportunity instead of punishment or something that creates victimhood in us. And I would say the part of 4D where you're working through a challenge, it's the things we do like working on forgiveness, journaling, meditating, praying. All of that stuff is how we create that bridge through the 4D to get into 5D consciousness. I wouldn't say that forgiveness and meditation is necessarily of the fourth dimension, but those types of tools are like the bridge that helps us make our way through the fourth dimension to get to the fifth without being stuck in the fourth. So, what I'd like to do is take a little meditative journey through the third, fourth, and fifth dimensions with you. I forgot to mention if you have any essential oil, I would say Envision Blend, if you've got that, that's a good one, or frankincense or sandalwood. Any of those three would be nice. I think I'm going to go with sandalwood today. And we're going to apply to a few points. The third eye, the temples, and then we'll go for the pads of the thumbs. The pads of the thumbs have points for the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, etc. Now I have fireworks. I don't know why. So we want to get temples, third eye, and thumb pads, both thumb pads. I'm going to invite you to just take a few deep breaths with me. Breathe all that goodness right up into the pineal gland in the center of the brain. And breathe all that goodness into your visual cortex within the brain as well. Breathe all that goodness into your energy body. And take as many breaths as you'd like, letting that aromatherapy do its work. It knows where to go in your mind, body, and spirit. Let it do its thing. And let's go on a journey, starting with this dimension where we already exist. Only we're not going to use our physical senses to observe the third dimension. We're going to use our higher consciousness. So calling in that really powerful wisdom of your own soul. If you are visual, I'm going to ask that your soul start to show you this third dimension through spiritual eyes. And if you're less visual, just let your soul show you through any of your spiritual sensitivities. Maybe you're noticing the density, how dense or thick it feels here. Maybe you're noticing textures, colors, lights, darks. Feel how your spiritual self understands and interprets the third dimension. As we continue this journey, you are wrapped in the brightest soul light. So you don't soak up anything that doesn't belong to you. You're not taking on that which is not yours. You're merely observing, understanding, gaining new insights and knowledge. And as we do that, let's move from the third into the fourth dimension. They tend to say it is less dense, though it does not tend to have that God consciousness awareness for some reason. Here in the fourth, observe any of the things you can observe: colors, light, lights, textures, pressures, sensations of any kind, visuals. And if you would compare the pressure of the fourth to the pressure of the third, if you're able to sense that. And notice what your higher consciousness wants you to understand or learn or observe here in the fourth dimension. And simply as an observer, not an absorber, just an observer, do you notice any entities or beings or specific kinds of consciousness here in the fourth dimension? Kind of a question that just occurred to me. Is there any sense of beings or entities or consciousness in the fourth pulling energy from the third, or parasiting off of, scavenging off energy in the third dimension? And then let's bring our awareness up into the fifth dimension through our higher consciousness. Just feel, how does your higher consciousness interpret, understand, sense the fifth dimension? What does your higher consciousness want you to learn, absorb, receive here in the fifth dimension? And if you can sense the density, just observe if you could compare third, fourth, and fifth dimensional density, how they feel different. And if you are able to pick up on any entities or consciousness here, just notice what's here, what's present here. And then I just really invite you to do a little practice just to see if you can do something. If you, within your own being, can merge these three dimensions together in the highest vibe way that helps you to live with your best mindset. When you're ready, I want to invite you to open your eyes. I was gonna have us journal, but I've been talking so much and not hearing the good things you have to say, so I'd love to just get your feedback about what you noticed in that meditation or even other experiences you've had with these various dimensions.
Well, I was going to let Dominic go.
Go for it.
He's there, but no, I love delving into the different dimensions on a daily basis. So thank you, Toby, for this. I love how your sentence of can you notice the difference in the densities? And yes, absolutely. I tend to find in my 3D everyday life, it's very dense. It feels heavier, right? Um, but I often zoom into the other dimensions and I get to see all kinds of patterns and colors and images and probably different timelines and things like that. Um, where that area, like in between the fourth and the fifth, my fourth dimension is clear of any loose. There, I clear it every single day, so they're not allowed to come near me. I have a shield up anyway between here and there. So every single day, all day long, I'm clearing that. And if they show up, I thank them, for their curiosity, and then I cast them. It's time to go. You're not allowed to come play here. Thank you for stopping by. Clear the room, and that includes clearing everyone else, both sides. So I clear that all day long. But the fifth dimension is where I really feel at home. And just the light that is there, in the beauty that is there, and the beauty is here as well in the 3D. So I like to bring it back in through that lens, but it definitely feels more like home to me. In my 3D body, I'm very uncomfortable quite often. I find that, so
I think
that's
it's
nice.
interesting because I think there's multiple options when we're done in this body. I do think it's possible that some beings, after finishing life on Earth, inhabit the fifth dimension, but I think others probably go to different dimensions besides that. But I do think that might be an option to be in the fifth dimension upon completion of this earthly life. Do you ever sense any other kinds of beings in the fifth dimension?
I feel like, hold on, David's banging something. I don't know if you could hear that. So it's more energy than actual beings. So to me, there's a it's almost like palpable, like you can feel the veil of it between the two, where the energy is that I am one with all that is. And so to me, it's like everyone is there. Does that make sense? It isn't like necessarily a being or anything like that. It is energetically so connected to all, including even and extended to the trees, the water, the light, all of it is you. And you are another me.
Mhm.
That's the way it feels to me.
Beautiful. I have a coaching client that refers to critters. She's very sensitive to like energy beings that are scavengers or parasites, and she's like, whenever her kids are in strife and acting up, she says, "Oh, we got a critter attack," and she does some clearing protocols to clear all that out. And I'd never thought of it in terms of dimensions before, but I feel like whenever she mentions the critters, it's like that fourth dimensional energy that is like, "Oh, there's food, let's go feed on it." I mean, and that doesn't we don't even have to put a value judgment on like, "That's bad, that's evil," We can just be like, "Okay, when we are stuck in negative emotions, we do open ourselves up to get our energy drained and sucked out."
I feel like it's both sides, Toby, like the duality of it. They're not just attracted to the negative, dark emotions. As a matter of fact, when I am deeply connected and my light is shining bright, they love to come around. They get curious.
Okay.
And the fourth dimension critters, if you will. And they love to see if they can dim it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So it's both sides. And yes, when you get in that 3D vibe where you are, your vibration has dropped, they love to stir the pot of that. Like that, just that they thrive off of it. But also if they see you, you're like this beacon, right? Doing all these things and your light is so bright, they can't not notice it. And they come over and they try to nick at it and ding at it and stick to it. So being really, really squeaky clean with the shielding work that you taught us years ago, that and others, that it's so important to be aware of if the critters are hanging around, because they can easily find a crack and come in and then they lose off of it.
And I don't know this from experience, but according to Rosario and maybe even some other teachers I've heard saying that they cannot experience that when you're in that super high vibe state and your light is shining really brightly. They cannot experience that themselves. For whatever reason, they can't experience that God consciousness in the fourth dimension. So, I mean, maybe they want to come nick at it and take it and suck it out, but like, the curious, I like the word you said, curious. It makes them curious because it's not something they can generate themselves.
And they look for the cracks.
Mhm.
That's what they're looking for, because if they can seep in, if there's a spot where they can get in, right? So if there's doubt is a really good one. It's the other one that's just so immobilizing, discouragement. So all the other ones, fear and anger and all of those are powerful, but those still have action. Where discouragement, if that wedge of discouragement, if they can get that in there, they can immobilize.
Stop you.
Because discouragement immobilizes. And so they look for those little cracks. At least that's the
So
way
shame
I
and
see
guilt, same thing. Shame and guilt stop you cold. Yeah. I love it, Coco. I love that your observations. I learned something there. That's really cool. I don't know that fourth dimensional consciousness has access to the fifth and higher dimensions. I don't want to say it doesn't because I don't know for sure, but it kind of seems like they don't, or that energy, that consciousness doesn't. And so even though we might say the third dimension where we live is lower, more dense, etc., I feel like we have more of an advantage because we can choose, do we stay stuck here and just keep our heads down and not ask questions and expand our knowledge, expand our consciousness? Or do we go, hell no, I want to know. Let's go. Let's learn. Let's adventure. Let's find out and expand that consciousness and get into, maybe we don't always live in the 5D consciousness, but we have the option to access it and go there, and we know how to go there. That's pretty amazing.
I feel like that is super powerful to recognize the duality of both, and that that fourth dimension is kind of the in between that like you said, the stuck energy. It gets stuck there because it is in between and it doesn't know. It only knows what it knows, right? So it doesn't know how to experience that, where we do get that option. And I think that is truly the gift of life in our 3D human experience, that we get to feel it and experience it, and probably why we even came here and we agreed to the contract, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, thanks, Coco. And Dominic, what about you? I know you have some good knowledge of the dimensions.
You know, it was interesting for this meditation. The first thing that so I went into the meditation, and I usually just jump to the fifth dimension when I start meditating. So then you were like, what does it feel like in the third? So then I had to come back down. So I had to open my eyes up so that I could be in the third dimension. So what I found was that, so we did the third, then we went into the fourth. And, you know, I'm not super sensitive to feelings and stuff like that. Sometimes they'll just come on out of nowhere. But, so when you said, you know, what does the fourth dimension feel like? I got a sign that said, like, well, if you could feel it, it would be tingling. Like, I feel like a tingling sensation over my, like, hands and feet and stuff like that. So, and like that, I felt it before, just not realizing that that's what it was. And then what was interesting was, and I'm not a visual person, so it's interesting that I saw this. I had a hand out, and they put in what looked like an upside down jellyfish in my hand. And then it started to like jump up and float away. And then it looked like a character from a video game called the Metroid. And what that character does is it attaches to you and absorbs your life energy. And
That's very fourth dimensional.
Well, what was interesting was I saw it just as you chimed in and said, "Do you see any critters?" So I was like, "Oh, yeah, I do." So then what I did was I took a little tiny ball of light, because the Metroids have like a little claw type thing that they would attach to you, and I put the light underneath it, a little ball of it, and then it evaporated the Metroid.
Wow.
And I heard once that when you're banishing that type of energy, you don't want to just push it away, because then it's like leaves and you're just pushing it onto your neighbor's lawn. So you're not really solving a problem. You're just not dealing with it anymore. So you want to send energy back to source.
Okay.
Because everything had to come from source. So when you see this energy, you're supposed to, or you feel it, or you know, you're cleansing, always just say, you know, I send you back to source from which you came. So that it's actually going away, and that you're not just pushing it away, you know, pushing it somewhere else. And then when we went to the fifth dimension, that was interesting. So that you know, again, I think I told you this, Toby, but a few weeks ago I was driving back from Lake Tahoe after a ski trip, and I was just in a state of serenity, that just completely for 9 hours, just complete serenity, and life was perfect, and I was perfect, and everything was awesome. And you know, I was told that was fifth dimension. Like, that's me experiencing fifth dimension, a third dimension realm, and in a way that I can actually operate in the third dimension. You know, because sometimes people experience it too heavily, and then they can't really do anything. They're in a state of bliss. But that was like, I was able to drive, I was able to concentrate, and I was able to stay present. And that really just, if I ever want to experience dimensions, just as long as I'm present, I can experience them fully in the third dimension. But then I had this vision of like, I was in a race, and I was able to race, and the race was fun, but my car didn't have wheels, it flew.
Wow.
So it wasn't that I was any faster than anyone else or anything like that. It was just easier, but still the same level of competition, so I could have fun. Because if I had a better car than everyone else, then it just wouldn't be fun. But it was like the car required less energy on my part in order to drive.
Less dense. Far less.
Less dense, yeah. Yeah, like a hovercraft, but I really think I could probably fly higher. Like, it had wings and stuff, but yeah, like a hovercraft. And maybe it could go faster, but that wasn't the point of it. Like, the point of it wasn't to beat everyone. That wasn't the point of the race. The point of the race is to have fun in the race. Mm. And this vehicle was going to be more fun and less energy, like less exertion in order to drive it.
So what if I must win at all costs and beat everyone else? We're, say, third dimensional consciousness. And fifth dimensional consciousness is, oh my gosh, this is so much fun.
Yeah. Because what does it matter if I win the race at the end of the day?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're eternal beings, then what happens?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, as you were talking, it made me think of like having awareness of and understanding what's going on in the fourth dimension is kind of like doing the shadow work. You know, I'm not someone that wants to dwell there too long or overly focus on it, but there are times to go, okay, I'm getting challenges here. What am I supposed to do to get through to the other side? I feel like journaling and so forth is a really great way to understand what is the fourth dimension trying to teach me, or what's the opportunity it's trying to give me. And I think that's it. A lot of people never ask the questions, so they are a victim of whatever they're whipped about by the winds of whatever's blowing, you know. But I think if we ask the questions, we do this work. The fourth dimension doesn't have to be a bad place. It doesn't have to be a place we dwell, but we don't have to hate it or try to fight it. We can go, what is it here to teach me? What is the opportunity it's providing me? And yeah, I think we all ask those questions. And I think maybe do we get all the answers and get it all figured out? Not necessarily, but I think we have a greater understanding. I'm very curious all that's in the dimensions above fifth, but I think that's for another time. One of the things I'd like to do this month is pick a current challenge, whether it's something emotional or whether it's something you're trying to attain or achieve. And I'd like to work it through the third and fourth dimensions and get into 5D consciousness with that challenge. So that's something we may do, is dissect a current challenge and take it through the entire process to get into the 5D mindset around it. Yeah. Well, any final thoughts before we call it a night?
Just thank you. Thank you for holding space for us, Toby.
I love this view. I haven't been that excited in a long time. I was sitting at dinner with Rosario in Mexico City in this wonderful Italian restaurant eating pulpo, or as they say in Italian, polpo, you know, I love octopus. It's so good. But I was eating that and we're just talking and I'm like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense. It was almost like when I very first learned about chakras, it resonated so deeply and made so much sense to me. It's kind of like that. Like I've heard of third dimension and fourth dimension and fifth dimension, you know, all this stuff, but it just kind of started clicking. And that very recent coaching client's dreams taught me so much. Third dimensional mindset is run from the monster, be afraid, while being controlled and manipulated by the fourth dimension. In order to get to fifth dimensional mindset, he had to run after the monster in the fourth dimension, not be afraid of it, face it, and then make peace with it. And when he made peace, that's when, boom, he's in fifth dimensional consciousness. I thought that really blew me away. It was so cool.
So I have a quick story. When I was young, growing up, I was riding in the car with my dad, and I'd had this recurring dream that happened quite often. And my dad and I are very close, and so I told him everything, always have, always will. And I start telling him this dream that I was having and what the monster looked like. And as I start to describe him, I'm like, yeah, and he had this ring. And my dad finished the dream.
Oh my God, no way. No way. Did he have it as a child or as an adult?
Both.
Wow.
This particular entity has followed him and me. So he explained to me, I think I was like, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 14 years old when this happened, and I expressed it to him. But this thing lived in the china cabinet that was a built-in china cabinet in my dad's home. It's a Victorian home at the time that he lived in, 3 stories with stained glass on the 3rd story. It's crazy, like lots of energy in that house. Anyway, this thing used to come in the music room. My dad would sit with his arm on the couch, and it would just run its fingers across his arm and just do these things. Anyway, he explained to me, he said, listen, this is no joke. You need to take your power back from him, And it was interesting because in my dream, he would be in that china cabinet and he had spider webs, all like as if he'd been there a very long time. And then the spider webs would come off and then he would come out. I won't describe him to you. But nonetheless, my dad finished the dream, and then he explained to me how to take my power back. And at that time, I was like, okay, because it was creepy and very real, but even more creepy when your dad finishes describing all the things. So I don't know why I have balloons for that, but
because you took your power back.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. And I'm not surprised, Coco.
Well, poor David has to live with me. You see, the entities do come to me when I'm sleeping. And when we first got married, sometimes I wake up and they startle me and I kick them. I kick and I punch because it startles you because you're in the 3D and they're not. But I can see them, and David's sitting there like trying to sleep in the bed next to me, and I'm kicking and punching, and but he's gotten used to it after over 25 years. But,
just a few bruises. Yeah.
Fine.
Bloody nose. Thank you both. This has been so powerful. I really enjoyed it, and I look forward to really putting some practical application on it, and also helping us. I know we're not going to permanently live in a 5D mindset while we're in a body, but helping us just access it more quickly and be in a mindset of being there more in 5D consciousness. It's easy when it's a sunny, beautiful day and you don't have to work and you're going to the beach. It's not easy when shit hits the fan. But we need 5D consciousness more even when shit hits the fan. So we'll do a little work on all that. Thank you both. Lots of love and gratitude, and I will see you soon.
Thanks, Toby.